Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is not a like-for-like adaptation of Homer's epic poem, and it doesn't try to be. The bag of winds is gone, the land of the lotus eaters never appears, Penelope's actual test from the poem, the one about the immovable bed, is replaced with something entirely different. But none of that is what this video is about, because buried beneath every change Nolan made is a single moral argument, an argument Homer never made but is hidden in many Christopher Nolan's films. You saw it when Batman took the blame for Harvey Dent's crimes and disappeared into the night. A hero who had to become the villain so the city could believe it was still good. You saw it when Oppenheimer watched the Trinity test and whispered, "Now I have become the death, the destroyer of worlds," a man who built the fire and spent the rest of his life staring into the flames. You saw it in Dunkirk, where survival was the only victory. In Interstellar, where saving the future meant abandoning the present. In The Prestige, where two men destroyed each other and called it art. The question Nolan keeps asking, the same question again and again across films he has made. What if the hero isn't the hero? What if civilization isn't civilized? What if we are the monsters we have been warning each other about? The Odyssey is where he finally says it out loud. 7 words spoken by Penelope to a man she suspects but doesn't yet know is her husband. You are the people from the sea. Once you understand what Nolan is arguing with those 7 words, every change he made snaps into focus as part of a single argument.
No one could stand between me and home. Not even the gods.
To understand Nolan's argument, you have to understand xenia, which usually gets translated as hospitality, a sacred obligation. When a stranger appeared at your door, you fed them, you sheltered them, you asked nothing in return, not because it was polite, but it was Zeus himself enforcing this law. They called him the Zeus Xenius. The stranger at your door might be a god in disguise. Breaking xenia was a crime against the divine order.
What would he do if he came back here and find all these suitors in his house?
Now Nolan removes the gods from the story. Even Zendaya's character, who first appears like she might be Athena, could just as easily be the priestess beheaded at Troy when the statue of Athena is desecrated.
But are there gods in it? In one way or another, there's a certain nods towards that.
However, the characters keep reaching for the divine. Telemachus keeps saying, "You have Athena's eyes." He says it to Mentor, he says it to Odysseus. When Mentor dies, Telemachus says he might have been Athena in disguise. In Homer's Odyssey, Athena actually disguises herself as Mentor. She walks beside Telemachus and helps him in his journey. In Nolan's version, the characters experience what Homer's characters attributed to gods. The lightning during Calypso's conversation with Odysseus, the suitor who says Zeus is interested in the outcome before the trial. The feeling of divine presence is still there. The actual gods are not. So why did Nolan remove them? Because Nolan wants Odysseus completely alone with his choices. Every time Athena comes to him, it is basically his inner wisdom speaking out loud.
Help me go home.
That's the first change, and it's the one that makes all the others matter. And now let's go back to the beginning of the journey, right after Troy, because there's a scene most analysts skip, and it might be the most important one in the film. Odysseus and his men land on an island. They need supplies. What do? They raid a village. They kill the men. They take the food. They burn what's left. This is not self-defense. This is not survival. This is what they did at Troy, reproduced on a smaller scale. The same pattern, the same violation. They left one war and immediately started another. They broke Xenia before they even knew they were doing it.
I think it's asleep.
He cuts the nobody trick. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus tells Cyclops his name is Otis, means nobody. He blinds a giant with a stake. When the other Cyclopses hears the scream, Polyphemus yells, "Nobody is killing me," and they leave him alone. Then as they sail away, Odysseus' ego gets the better of him. He shouts his real name. The Cyclops prays to Poseidon, who curses him. That's where the 10-year nightmare begins. Nolan cuts all of it. In his version, Odysseus fires an arrow at the Cyclops as they leave. An act of anger, revenge for the men he lost. And then he tells his men, "The gods help those who help themselves." There's a double meaning here. To help yourself means to aid yourself. It also means to steal, to help yourself to what is in someone's home. Odysseus is still operating as a barbarian. He hasn't learned anything yet. He's still the sea people. And there's a line in this scene that you might miss if you aren't listening for it. Eurylochus says to Odysseus, "The person living here probably hasn't heard of Zeus's law." Odysseus replies, "No, everyone has heard of Zeus's law, including Odysseus, including the Greeks at Troy, including every suitor in the hall. They all know the law and they all break it anyway. That's the point." Now look at Circe. In Homer's Odyssey, she's a witch. She drugs the men, she turns them into pigs. In Nolan's adaptation, we get her reason. She tells Odysseus his men are barbarians. His men will take what they want. She's not a villain, she's a survivor who understood before Odysseus did what his men had become. Circe just made the outside match the inside. And then there is the underworld. In Homer's version, Odysseus speaks to 7 figures. Nolan limits it to 3. Tiresias, Agamemnon, and the one who matters most, Sinon. Sinon is the boy Odysseus lied to. The boy who took another man's place in the war only to die because of the ultimate lie, the Trojan Horse. Odysseus used him, lied to him, sent him to his death, and now in the underworld, Sinon is waiting. The trickery of the Trojan Horse started well before the horse was taken inside Troy. It started with a lie told to a boy, and in Nolan's film, that boy is there to remind Odysseus what the lie cost.
Let's go!
This is the turning point. Odysseus decides he is not worthy to go home. The lie he told, the law he broke, the boy he used, all of it means he is unworthy. Even the sirens tell him the same thing. They sing about something you had and then you lost. Before Troy, he was a hero, and after Troy, he is a man who broke the one law that separated civilization from savagery. Now let me ask you something. Who violated Xenia first in the story of Troy? Not the Trojans. They accepted the horse. It was left as an offering to Athena. They dragged it inside their walls, believing they were receiving a blessing from the gods. The Greeks violated Xenia. Odysseus violated Xenia. He hid soldiers inside a gift. He turned the sacred obligation into a weapon. He walked through a door that was opened in trust and burned everything on the other side. And Odysseus, the man who conceived the lie, spent the next 10 years living with what that actually cost. This is the current running beneath every frame of Nolan's film. The Trojan War left Greek armies weakened for a generation. Ports were exposed, cities were undefended, alliances were broken. The sea people didn't destroy Greek civilization from outside. They walked through doors the Greeks left open. Everyone in the ancient world was terrified of the sea people. Everyone warned about them, and nobody stopped to ask the obvious question: what if the sea people were us? Odysseus returns to Ithaca, but he doesn't return as Odysseus. He returns as Sinon, the dead boy's name, the name of the lie that started everything. Think about that choice. The cleverest man in Greek mythology, the man who outsmarted everyone, he comes home and the first thing he does is put on the face of the person he used and discarded. He doesn't announce himself as the king. He doesn't reclaim his name. He becomes the lie itself. And then he walks into his own palace and sees what 20 years of his absence has done to the place he was fighting to return to. The suitors are everywhere, eating his food, drinking his wine, mocking his son, preying on his wife. They arrived as guests and stayed as parasites. They took what they wanted and gave nothing back.
They're pining for a daddy. You didn't even know. Like some sniffling.
This is Xenia violated from the inside. Not Greeks crawling out of a wooden horse, not raiders landing on a foreign shore. Their own people, men from their own island, consuming a kingdom from within while calling themselves. They are the sea people whose ships never left the harbor. And Odysseus sees it immediately. He sees himself in them. That's the horror Nolan is building toward. It is not that the suitors are monsters. It is that they are Odysseus 20 years ago, entitled, ruthless, willing to take whatever they want as long as nobody is strong enough to stop them. The only difference is scale. The suitors are devouring a palace. Odysseus helped devour a city.
A wife? A son?
And then what?
We won the war.
And then comes the line, the one Nolan invented from nothing. Odysseus is still disguised, still Sinon to everyone in the room. He confesses to Penelope not who he is, but what he did. He tells her what it felt like to crawl out of that wooden horse after 10 years of waiting on a beach, 10 years away from family, and watch it all unleashed on a single night of slaughter. Penelope, who still does not know this man is her husband, who has been waiting 20 years for someone who no longer exists, looks at him and says, "You are the people from the sea." 7 7 words Nolan wrote himself, 7 words Homer never imagined. The monsters, the barbarians, the destroyers of civilization, the mysterious force every ancient kingdom warned about for centuries, the storm that washes over empires and leaves nothing behind. That's us. That was always us. We are the people from the sea, carrying fire we cannot control, landing on shores we will inevitably destroy.
You're goddamn right.
After successfully completing Penelope's trial of stringing Odysseus' bow and shooting an arrow through the 12 lined up axes, one by one Odysseus kills the suitors in the hall. First Polybus dies, then many more, and finally Antinous. The remaining bow down for Ithaca's king, and this should be the moment of triumph. But it's not, and Nolan makes sure you feel why. Because to kill the suitors, Odysseus must once again break Xenia. He must spill blood in his own home. He must become one more time the thing he's trying to destroy. And this time there is no Athena to guide the arrow, no Zeus to declare it just. Nolan removed them all. There is only a man who made a choice, a man who is about to learn that you cannot cure a broken law by breaking it again. After the slaughter, after the line, after Penelope names what her husband has been through, Odysseus does not reclaim his throne. He gives it to Telemachus, the one person in this story who might still deserve to rule, the one person who did not break the law, the one person who was not at Troy. Odysseus looks at his son and hands him the kingdom he spent 20 years fighting to come home to, because he knows now that he cannot have it. The civilization he was trying to return to was built on the very violence he can no longer pretend was justified. And then he sails into the unknown west, into exile, to honor his men with Penelope alongside. No Athena descends from Olympus to declare peace, no restoration of order, no happily ever after, just a ship and an ocean and two people who have lost too much to ever fully return. This is the ending Homer could not write. Homer was writing a civilization's origin story, the hero's journey that justifies everything that came after. The king returns, order is restored, the gods are satisfied, the audience goes home feeling good about the world. Nolan is writing something closer to an autopsy. The hero's journey might be a myth. What actually happens to men who break the moral law is that they never truly come home. Not all the way, not to the place they left. The best they can hope for is to recognize what they have destroyed, confess it to someone who loves them, and sail toward a horizon that cannot restore what they burned. And if this argument sounds familiar, there's a reason. Because Nolan has been making the exact same argument for 25 years.
I killed those people. That's what I can be. No, you can't. You're not. I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. Call it in.
That's the moral argument Nolan has been making his entire career. Not that heroes don't exist, that heroes are the people who finally admit what they did. Not that civilization is worthless, that civilization is built on a broken law and pretending otherwise is real barbarism.
Bringing it all.
That is my take on the moral argument Christopher Nolan left behind at the end of Odyssey. If you found this video insightful and are interested in watching more, check out a video on the Troy movie as an essential prequel to the Odyssey right here. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.